Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. 4 p.m. BST, Monday afternoon. Lazar is back and the good doctor, Dr. Ellis Whitehead. Lazar, would you like to give the people an introduction on yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Lazar and I'm the owner of Seller Zepinić, Amazon PPC dedicated agency. We're working for a year and a half now, and it's a group of 20 people, PPC specialists that are working on exclusively on Amazon PPC.
Excellent. And for you, Ellis?
My name is Ellis. Danny and I have been working together for a couple of years plus now, and we've got Databril where we generate our experience.
Excellent. All right. So today we're going to talk about, we done account structure, etc. last week, and we went in and around the topic. But this week we're going to be looking at keywords, when to double down, when to give up on them, and different points of view there as well. So just kicking off the show, let's kick off with the type of keyword groups. I like to call them head tail, long tail, related keywords, or neighboring keywords, as sometimes they can be called in terms of being contextual. So from your point of view, Ellis, give us the top down head keywords, long tail, and then related keywords, your interpretations.
Well, it's largely a matter of how many orders end up taking place, being created on these per day, because the number of orders per day, or at least the number of clicks per day, is going to determine how far back in history do you need to look in your PPC history to determine the conversion rate.
Yes.
And since conversion rate is one of the most important statistics, that's kind of where I base it around. So if you're getting if we want to have ideally 100 clicks or more to say that we're fairly comfortable with saying what the conversion rate is, and you're getting 10 clicks a day, then you just have to look back a week and a half and you've already got that. But if you're only getting 1 click a day, then you're going to have to look back, 3 months in data to maybe establish the conversion rate.
Cool. And the same question to you, Lazar. So when I talk about head tail keywords, I'm talking about high search volume, long tail, lower search volume, not off of the main keyword. And then when we talk about related keywords, you can talk about things like gifts for men, gifts to women, because they're kind of related, but they're going to have a lower conversion rate. The search results page will have a mixture of different types of products there. So what is your interpretation? What do you determine as the main keywords or the head tail keywords as an example?
Yeah, well, it's interesting when client comes with already structured accounts, so we don't want to kill something that is already working. We don't try to be super smart and just to show that we can create a whole bunch of different campaigns. And depending on what they create, it's the way how the account is going to look like. But if it's up to us, if everything was made from scratch, I would always go to keywords that are having automatic campaign, the manual campaign that is top generic campaign with main keywords, highest traffic keywords that are not long tail with most competitors there. And from there, I would branch out further depending on term that is used, depending on the product, because some of the products don't have a lot of keywords there. There are no thousands and thousands of keywords, but that are highly relevant. And on the other hand, if you have something that is that has lower amount of keywords, then we would try to harvest some keywords from reviews, for example, which is a really good way to find something out that can be used. So for those keywords, we call them problem solvers. Those keywords are not the main ones that you would think about, and we would have a group of campaigns that would be based on problem solvers. Apart from that, we would create long tail keywords or basically easy wins with lower amount of competitors that are competing to win that keyword. And also we would try to create medium. And also what people usually ask, if they have color variations, size variations and stuff like that, should we have keywords that are going to mention yellow coffee cup or like green one or whatever. So we would create campaigns with color variations and sizes variations, and we would place only that specific ace in there. We wouldn't place like the ones that is the best seller.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So can I jump in and ask questions?
Of course.
So how do you manage what length of keywords do you go for, Lazar? What's the kind of like your rules or general rule of thumb with that?
Yeah, it's more like rule of thumb. So basically, like regular keywords, in like my opinion, are like up to 3 words inside of it. But like for long tails, we would go to something that is 7 or 8 words inside of it. But it really depends also like if it makes sense. If it's like copy paste from somewhere, like title from somewhere, or like part of the text, that can usually be triggered by some other keyword that is shorter but in phrase or in broad variation. But if you see that specific long tail keyword is generating traffic, that the CTR is really good, as you mentioned, and like conversion rate is really good, then we would definitely create a keyword for that as well.
So how often have you seen, like, how often do you see 7-word keywords, for example, having like consistent regular traffic?
Well, there is not huge amount of those keywords that are that big that are going to make a difference, but they're like easy wins. You can generate some easy sales from them, and you should definitely have them in your account. And obviously, one of the things that are super important, one of the most important things, is to have everything structured in the right manner. So don't mix match types in the same ad group. I'm pretty sure that Brent covered like most of it with you guys like last week. But like when you check your search term report, when you see those search terms there, you want to be sure that your keyword triggered that specific search term. So not like a whole bunch of variations. From time to time, it's okay to have some other search term that was triggered by that specific keyword. But if it's highly
We lost your mic there, Lazar. Do you just want to unmute, please? There you go.
Yep.
Sorry, I was muted for a second, so it might be. So as I mentioned, what you want to do there is to be sure that your keyword is working okay, that your search terms are relevant to those keywords, and if not, like you negate them there. So basically what we usually do, we create something that is a campaign called highly relevant but non-profitable keywords. We take search terms that are completely relevant, that make a lot of sense, but are spending money and they're not making any sales, or making just like not profitable amount of sales. So what we usually do, we check if we have that specific search term as a keyword in that specific campaign, or in any other campaign, and see like if it's covering the same ASIN or maybe the other one. If there's nothing like that in any of the campaign, we would then negate it in that specific campaign, so it wouldn't be triggered by that search term in that campaign, and we would take it out and create specific campaign, as I mentioned, like highly relevant, non-profitable keywords. And we would try to compare like what's the CPC for that search term that happened previously in that specific campaign that it was triggered from, and compare it to the one that we are going to create there, and then decrease it a bit. And basically, we wouldn't just like let it go from the scratch. We would definitely leave it and try to optimize it a bit. And after some time, if we decrease bid from more and more and more and more, and if still we don't have anything profitable there, we would then negate it, basically.
Just want to, okay, I'm going to say some hellos. Elchin's here. Hi, all. Nice to see you. Facebook user says, hi, people. Side B's back. Happy Monday. Elchin's here. Hello, gents. Alan Gordon's here again. Hello, gents. Right, so
Hello,
just go
everyone.
back. Hello, everyone. And to all the guys, Andrew, Juan, Rob, Ricky, Doug, and all the other guys that are in the Ben Valence, etc. And Lawrence Barnes in the feed. So I just want to go back, and I'll keep going about head tail, long tail, related keywords. What about for people that are launching a new product? They're doing their keyword research. Quite often I see people focusing on search volume, and they go, right, that's my my keyword, and they determine everything off a handful of keywords, which might be, very competitive. And also, not even though it's got high search volume, doesn't mean it's going to have searcher's intent to where it converts. From your experiences, what would you say is deemed, and we'll use the US market because it's a bit easier than the UK or EU because of the search volume in long tail, which we'll discuss a bit later. What would you say is a kind of ideal rounded number of search terms for a kickoff campaign of someone launching a product? So they go off and do their research, but they might only have one or two, or they may have a shit ton of long tail keywords, but there's nothing really there in terms of velocity. Starting with you, Ellis, what would you see is kind of a rounded number?
Right. So we generally want to start with something that's much smaller than most people do. So we would start with somewhere between 10 and 100. And 100 would really be on the upper end. And so if we have there's so many different kinds of products. If we find a lot of relevant keywords in brand analytics, then we'll use those. We restrict ourselves to begin with to keywords that are in brand analytics. And we don't make any attempt to add in additional smart keywords, so to speak, because you can also use broad match. And so with the 20 exact keywords and using all of those in broad match optionally as well. We don't always start with broad match, but but we often do. That already gets you almost into almost everything that's going to be relevant. Right. And so where we then would use the data is once we see longer tail keywords coming in, where there is enough data to kind of say, yes, this is worth being an exact match term. And by worth it, I mean, it has a high enough volume. That then we'll add those in. And as history comes in, then it's very common for us to like mark 100 or so, find like 100 or so relevant keywords, and we continue running those in broad match. Of course, there are more relevant keywords than those, but we're focusing on the ones that we can develop statistics for.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just, you mentioned earlier about brand analytics. So we've had discussions before, is that if they're not in the report, then the daily search volume is quite low. Have you got a little more statistics here? I know we've mentioned it on the show before, but I just wanted to give it a little bit more context so that when people are doing their keyword research, so they might use third-party tools and then suddenly realize there's barely any of those search terms in brand analytics, what to do in that situation.
Well, you don't need all those. You don't need all those search terms. You'll get like 3,000 search terms when you look this stuff up on Jungle Scout and Helium 10 or whatever. Right. And as I said, I think 20 is a great place to start. And just that when you do the broad match campaigns, you have to also intelligently negate or quickly start negating, because you're going to be getting a lot of bad stuff in the beginning. But if you just plan on running these broad match campaigns with a certain budget a day, even if you don't negate, but it's a reasonable budget, you're getting good data, and you can adapt from there.
Okay, so going back to the other part of the question, what would you say if the search terms are not in the brand analytics report? What kind of impact?
Well, if they're not in brand analytics, they don't even have 10 searches a day. That's not even to say clicks. So you're getting so few clicks and orders off of them that unless your PPC is showing that they're important, they're very likely not important and not worth, like, you're investing your time into. So they can be good keywords, even if they're not on the brand analytics report. But then normally, and there are exceptions, normally in broad match for the way that we approach it.
Yeah. Okay, so to reiterate there is that if a lot of the time, not all the time, a lot of times, if the search terms are not in the brand analytics report, they generally have 10 searches or less per day.
Right. And,
Yeah.
searches, and then, of course, much less in terms of clicks and
So
orders.
if less than 10 or less a day is 300 searches a month. Yeah, it's going to take you a long while to reach statistical significance if there's going to be any. Yeah. Lazar, what about you? Do you start broad? Do you just obviously harvest search terms, use multiple tools, and then bring it all together? What's your process?
Definitely, analytics is a huge part of our research process. We just really like using them. What we usually do, depending on the strategy for that product launch, depending if the client is doing some other stuff apart from PPC, we would then focus on certain amount of keywords. Basically, when we do a keyword research, we would provide client with certain amount of keywords, telling them like these are the main 5 or main 10 keywords that you should probably focus on at the beginning. And for those, we create something that we call push campaigns, which is basically exact form of that keyword, and we try to bid a bit more aggressively to generate data faster and to see what's going to happen. Because I remember in one of your seller sessions, we talked about basically if PPC can do negative stuff for your keyword ranking and basically for your product BSR and everything. We strongly believe when you don't have good CTR and your conversion rate is lower than the niche average, you would basically do negative stuff for your product. So basically what we would do, we would always have one automatic campaign as a safety net. Something that we usually do is like, there are mixed feelings about that campaign. It's an automatic campaign that is like nickel campaign. And apart from that, we obviously provide manual campaigns, but also that one push campaign that is definitely the most important one that is changed over the time, because we focus on certain group of keywords, not always the main keywords. Like out of those 3 or 5 or 10 keywords, like 50% would be with highest relevancy and the highest traffic, but some of them are going to be easier wins, because if depending on the niche and depending on the amount of competitors and like your competition, how much they're investing into PPC, it really depends how much money you're going to invest there, especially if you combine that with, of course, in those situations, we would try with ASIN targeting as well instead of those keywords. But for example, what clients usually combine is search, find, buy, or newsletters or that kind of stuff. And we combine PPC with that, with like main push campaign, also with other campaigns, and having automatic campaign that is a safety net that is used for harvesting, basically. And one thing that Ellis mentioned is that I completely agree with, is not to try to create campaigns with 1,000 keywords and so on at the beginning. Like always, like never create campaigns with 1,000 keywords in there, because you're going to end up seeing just maybe 10 or 20% of them working like through the history. So what we usually try to do is to have like from 30 to 50 keywords in one campaign, and to keep that way. And if we need more keywords, we would just create more and more campaigns, not like stuff them in one campaign.
Okay. Side B says, I think he wants to get more into the dirt here. So when you say that you get good data from the campaigns, what is good data? Starting with you, Ellis. Example, conversion rates, click-through rates, etc. What gives some ideas? I know it's kind of generic, but give us some statistics that people can use as a rule of thumb, if you like.
Sure. So good data for me in PPC terms is, just as a rule of thumb, is that you have 100 clicks worth of data for a given query or competitor ASIN. And you don't have to have, in some cases, you can see that your sales, the number of orders you've gotten on this was so low, you can just ignore it before you get to 100 clicks. But for the most part, I really like to see at least 100 clicks before I start calling it good data. And yeah, and then depending on your click rate, it'll take a various number of days to get good data, so to speak, on a keyword. And the reason for this 100 clicks is because if you have, for example, 10 clicks only, and it's an example I've often used because people used to have, like, it was a very common practice to look at the first 10 clicks and then decide whether to negate a keyword or not. And that is absolutely useless. So you can imagine having a 10-sided die, or dice, however you pronounce it, and you roll it 10 times. And what you're looking for, let's say if you roll a 1, that represents somebody ordering it. And so if you roll this die 10 times and a 1 doesn't show up, there is, if you have any understanding, intuition for likelihoods here, you're not going to be surprised, because you only expect it to be a 1 once in 10 times on average. And if if you roll 15 times and a 1 still hasn't showed up, you still shouldn't be surprised. And so if you just, look at the probability distributions and whatnot, you can see that with less than about 100 clicks, your certainty of what the conversion rate is very low. There's more to it than that, but
I've seen, because you've done presentations in it, up to, but then that marker between, I think it was 100 clicks and 300 clicks, as more and more clicks come into play, the data becomes more predictable and cleaner to use, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
I want to jump in. Sorry.
Go on. Yeah, of course you can.
It's super important to track the changes for those specific keywords. So people usually check just one specific date range and check the amount of clicks and everything, but they don't consider other stuff that are happening in that specific ad group or campaign. They don't consider if they negated a whole bunch of stuff for that specific keyword, if it's in phrase or broad match type. And also if they made some significant change in bidding. So basically you should always consider a whole bunch of different stuff. If you have something that is going to be a drastic change, that would definitely make a huge difference for that specific keyword performance in that period and period after the change.
Yeah, very true. Like the biggest place where that makes a difference that we have to consider, very regularly, is that if you increase your bid, that might start getting you to top of search, whereas say you weren't before. And the difference in conversion rate at top of search and other positions for many niches, it's quite significant. It can double your conversion rate in some cases. And so yeah, that would be, looking at the placements, very important. And then with regard to what you were saying about changes over time, new competitors come in, reviews change, whatever, so many things. This is one reason why we don't bother with keywords that have a really low volume as in exact match form, because you end up, once you start having to look back more than like 3 months in the search history in order to get 100 clicks or so, it becomes more and more questionable about how relevant is that for today. And so, maybe as a general rule, if you have to look back more than 3, sometimes 6 months might be okay for a keyword to get 100 clicks on it, then we're generally not going to be including it as an exact match.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's kind of like spending your time for no reason on that keyword.
Exactly.
Because at that point you're touching seasonality as well.
Well, that's my next question. Let's talk about seasonality and how you would look at those search terms in terms of, optimizing. Ellis?
Do you want to go first, Lazar?
Oh, Lazar, sorry. Do you want to go first?
Okay, well, when it comes to seasonality, obviously, you can expect that a lot of people, like everybody in your niche, is thinking in the same manner as you are. And obviously, everybody is going to increase budgets.
We've got you, you sound like you're scratching on the deck there, mate. You DJing
Yeah,
there?
something's wrong with the
I think
audio.
his audio is playing up. Let's see if he comes back in.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
There
Yeah,
we
good
go.
again.
He's back in the game.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, for some reason my mic just like decides to be muted, and like sorry about that.
That's all right.
So I don't know which part you heard, but like for depending on seasonality, other competitors are also changing bids and changing budgets. So it can affect everything on your side and on your end as well. So depending on what others are doing, like also we need to have in mind that people usually forget to switch everything back after the specific seasonality or specific dates. Like if they had like for example for Black Friday or Cyber Monday and stuff like that, people just forget to fix everything after that. Especially like there is like that halo effect after big days. You have a couple of more days that you try to milk more sales and get more stuff there, but like it's important to be sure that you know what you're doing. And like people come and say just like, oh, we would like to add keywords like gift for dad or gift for mom. I don't know, guys, how it works for you, but if you never ranked for that keyword and you never showed up for that keyword, you're probably not going to make huge amount of sales on that. It doesn't matter how high bid you place there, and because algorithm needs time to learn. And if you all of a sudden create a keyword that is like gift for dad and you never had anything like that, you need to generate clicks first before Amazon decides if you're relevant for that or not.
Mm-hmm. Ellis, do you want to do your take on seasonal data, how you look at keywords, like so the time between, is it 3 months, 6 months, and which periods, and do you weigh them off against the low periods, etc.?
Well, first of all, it's a really difficult problem.
Yes. Yeah.
One reason seasonality is difficult is because every time the season comes again, the conditions are different. And so what things were like for Mother's Day last year was a lot different than what it was like this year, for example. But you know, it's every time the season comes around, you're going to have different conditions, different competitors, different ratings on different products, different pricing, and different cost per click. So it's like you go in blind to a little bit blind into the season each time. Yeah. One of the things that's really important or that can be very important for seasonal products is the product targeting competitors that are relevant. So if it's a really broad niche, like gifts for dads, like you mentioned, Lazar, then it's useful to be looking at, well, what other gifts for dads have people bought our product off before, assuming that it's not a completely new one. And if it is new, you just have to try guessing. And we have some gift clients, for example, where the majority of their sales are coming from purchases off of other gift-like ASINs. But if you can stay in the keywords, then basically we're running usually the same keywords throughout the year. But we have a dial in our algorithms for our bids, and so we'll dial the bids up as we enter the season, and then we dial it back down afterwards. And that's really that covers about 80% of it, and then another 20% of it is, well, what if you do have new keywords that you only want to run during the seasonal time? You have to take care of that. And then there are maybe new keywords this season. That's not unusual as well. And so a good way to find new keywords is if you know the other competitors who are selling for similar keywords, is you can track those those ASINs in the brand analytics reports, for example, and see what what keywords they're showing up for. And then among those, you can pick the ones that are relevant for you. And so we find that's very useful as part of this 20 of the 80-20, actually. As part of the 20, that's a very important part to pursue as well.
Sounds good. Lazar, do you have anything to add here before we move on?
No, I think Ellis covered everything when it comes to seasonality.
So let's go back to the gift keywords. It's an interesting one, isn't it? In terms of what to expect is versus your target keywords, our gift keywords, the conversion rate on those, what to expect. So if you were to offer advice, Lazar, when using gift keywords, what are some of the key things that people need to look out for?
Well, when it comes to gift keywords, definitely you should, like, first you should check if you're really giftable with a product, and like if it makes sense for you to do that kind of stuff. Also, what we often hear as a question is, can we use image that has some like words with like gifts and stuff like that as a main image that we can use for sponsor brands and stuff like that? I strongly suggest not to, because it's against terms of service. So, like, guys, like, be sure that you play fair. And when it comes to basically those keywords, you need to be sure that you can rank for them and that you're indexed for them. Because if you're not indexed for a certain keyword, it doesn't matter if it's like gift keyword or any other keyword. If it's going to be super expensive to get any traction, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be profitable at that point. So you need to be sure that you have some traction and some history for specific keywords, that you're indexed for them, and that it makes sense for you to show up. And also, as Ellis mentioned, you should definitely check other products and like other competitor ASINs, what they show up for, and maybe you should combine those keywords with campaigns that are ASIN targeting campaigns, so you would show up on them as well and try to basically steal some sales from them. And also with display campaigns, and where you can create headlines that are going to move people from that specific product listing to your listing.
Yeah, makes sense. Ellis, you got what's your take with the gift keywords? Some insights from you.
Well, it's really interesting because we sometimes see really high conversion rates on these generic keywords. And that's quite interesting because they're so generic. But what it must be is that often when people are searching for it, they're not necessarily particular about what they get anyway. And so it might be that if they click on your particular item, maybe it's not surprising that there's a, say, 17% conversion rate on that generic keyword. And for, maybe more likely top of search, but still. So it's really one of these things where we find it can be vastly different depending on the niche. And for some products, gift keywords will never work out. For most products, they wouldn't, of course. But even for a lot of giftable products, it won't work out. And for some, it works out pretty well. So test it if you think it's appropriate.
Cool. Let's talk US versus EU search volume. I think a lot of people get undone. They come out the US market because of the broadness of the market and the depth of it in terms of long tail. They jump into Europe, they throw all their products up around Europe, and they go, blimey, there's just no search volume. So give us some insights there, starting with you, Ellis. What have you seen is where people should look to measure that off? Obviously, good product research and researching those keywords makes sense. But there is a big shift, isn't there? And in a lot of cases, like search volume. So in the US, you might have, 60, 70 search terms that are going to be relevant with you, including all like the long tail. But then you might go to the UK and then you've got 5. And then in France, you've got 1 or none. And then in Spain, you've got 2. But then Germany being the second largest market, I still think maybe a bit more. Talk to me about that, what you've seen.
Well, it's very true. if you want to have an idea of what your sales could potentially be like, what if you go from the US to the UK, then definitely look at the brand analytics report first, and look at the what keywords are in there. And you have to be aware, though, that so in the United States currently, brand analytics has about 1.8 million keywords per day that it lists.
Yeah.
This is much more than it used to be. So what I think it is that there is a lot more shopping going on in Amazon now than there was before COVID. So
Yes.
that the brand analytics report had about 1.2 million keywords in it pre-COVID and 1.8 now. In the UK, I think the brand analytics reports, I don't remember quite offhand, maybe 250,000, 300,000. So you're talking about just a much smaller number of keywords. And then in addition to that, the keywords that are selling are typically, there's just lower volume. So you have lower search volume, lower sales volume, and to be prepared. You're going to find that no matter what market you're in, if you go to a different market, there are going to be some keywords that just do not have any demand in this other market, and prepare yourself that way. See what's going to make sense.
Yes, Lazar, any thoughts here?
Yeah, for this, there is a whole bunch of stuff that is happening. People tend to translate keywords from American English to German, for example. And that doesn't necessarily end up being well. So you need to do completely new keyword research. And even going from US to UK, like just some simple stuff like pants, it's not the same thing.
Well, a cooker
US.
or an oven and a stove, they're interchangeable, depends on the country. Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends. And also, when people do keyword research in Germany, they usually skip like single word keywords. And comparing German language and like British English, it's like difference. Like this is the size of German word, and it has like 10 letters, 15 letters in it, and people usually skip it. And like those keywords usually hold a lot of traffic, and people need to be sure that they cover everything, especially those like compound words in Germany, and also to be sure not just to like translate from English to German and like that's it, because there are a whole bunch of different ways how people say stuff in different markets, and you cannot expect that people are going to use the same words like literally translated from in one market as in the other. So it's
so what you're saying is you might have a 2 or 3 word example of a keyword that is in the US, but that is expressed as a single word in Germany. And people will skip it because they go, oh, that's a single word. I'm not going to even attempt looking at that because they don't understand the context and the dialect and everything part of the language, that's involved.
Exactly.
So there's a good point there, yeah, because most people won't look at single word keywords as they're too, or they're too broad or they're too high search volume. They're looking for more like 2 or 3 word phrases, aren't they?
Yeah, even though in Germany is that super specific word. So it's skipped. So that's one of the points that you should definitely have in mind when it comes to German market in specific.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, huge amount of people just copy paste everything from US listing and US campaigns to UK campaigns or Canadian ones, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. One of the things that we sometimes try is Spanish keywords in US, and sometimes they work. Sometimes they work. So I strongly recommend that people try some Spanish campaigns for US market.
Cool. Let's talk about the complication of the language. Lazar, you speak multiple languages. Ellis, I think you're fluent in Germany. German. I'm not sure if you speak other languages. Let's talk to the audience about the complications if you only speak one language and you're trying to operate in these territories, and some little workarounds, if at all there is any.
Well, one of the things I wanted to also just confirm what Lazar was saying about German. We have, quite a few products, clients with products in Germany, and yeah, it really isn't unusual to have single word keywords that are some of the client's main keywords. And there's some really, there's some funny long German keywords, like just looking up one of them here. This is just for, to show how long a German word can be. Donau-Dampfschiffsfahrtselektrizitäten Hauptbetriebswerk Bau unter Beamtengesellschaft. So that's one word that means association of subordinate officials of the head office management of the Danube Steamboat Electrical Services.
Of course.
So that's not normal.
That's your title gone then, isn't it? That's your title just disappeared if you use that as a keyword, yeah.
Yeah. It's never going to be anything like that, but it's not unusual to have, maybe 20 letter keywords in German or something.
Yeah.
So they can be quite long. Okay, so the brand analytics can help. An approach that we take is to look at what I might call the core words for a product. And normally a product is going to have a few of these. And so these are keywords that if they're not in the search term, then it probably has nothing to do with your product. So there's going to be certain keywords that have to be in the search term in most cases for the person to be looking for something, to be interested ultimately in buying your product. So those are the core ones. But the core keywords, of course, will cover a much broader set of ASINs than just yours. And so then we have the kind of I don't know what you want to call it, the augmenting or the property keywords in addition. And these are ones that when people type them in, it's getting closer to your product. And so just as a general rule, and there are exceptions, but as a general rule, a good keyword will have the core keywords in it, and or a core keyword, and one or two descriptive keywords that fit for yours. And so if you want to use brand analytics, if you have brand analytics in France, for example, your core keywords, you're only going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe of them. And you can get those translated through Google Translate or DeepL or something. But then you plug them into the brand analytics search, and you search just for those, shorter core keywords, and see what comes up. You can click on the ASINs, see are they relevant,
and see the images, and
yeah. And so this is the quick way to just get your maximum of 5 core keywords. And then from there, you've translated just some of these additional descriptive keywords, and you can enter that in with your core keywords and see what comes up. And as I said, when we were talking about the number of keywords for launching in the beginning, you only want maybe 20, you only really need 20 keywords to be super effective with launch campaigns if you've picked them well, and you also do broad match on those.
But of course, make sure managing negation as well on that.
Yeah.
Lazar, do you want to add anything here before we go?
Yeah, there is one more thing that can make things even more complicated in German market. Is Japanese market, because they use katakana, hiragana, and kanji. I studied Japanese at the university, so I had huge headaches for years, like studying it. And you can imagine like writing one word in 3 different ways. And also you can combine all 3 types of writing in a single sentence, which makes it even more complicated.
Yeah.
So like, it's super crazy. And I never knew in the past like, is search term going to trigger that specific keyword if it's written like in symbol instead of like letters? And it does. It triggers everything. Like, it triggers in a whole bunch of different ways. So if you decide to write everything in hiragana, you can trigger kanji basically, which is symbol. So when it comes to all of that, what we like to do is basically to have separated keywords in like whole 3 different ways how to write it, and that's a whole new level of headache when it comes to Japanese market. Even though like people hate Japanese market because of different variations of stuff, like from paperwork, and it's far, and they don't know the language, and it's super hard to write the listing and so on. But when it comes to PPC, it's even more difficult. So if you want to try to work on Japanese market and do PPC there, you definitely want to have automatic campaign as well, because you need to learn from somewhere. And when you, it's like whole language is like based on something completely different than like Roman languages or like English or like Serbian that I speak as well. So it's for us from the West, it's really difficult to understand the way how they think. So when we create campaigns, it's going to be a whole bunch of mess, and you need to check your search terms even more comparing to like what you do in Germany, for example, or US.
Yep. Cool. Let's leave that there. Lazar, how does people reach you?
Office at sellersalley.com, or our website sellersalley.com, or through Facebook.
Cool. So if you want Lazar to manage your accounts, have a chat with him. If you want to look at Databrill, you can get in contact with me, which is danny@databrill.com. We've got the new website launching soon, and a couple of new surprises, which we'll announce on this show in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. Gentlemen, it's lovely to see you. I'll see you, Ellis, probably next week. Lazar, I'll see you again very soon. And have a good day, guys. And I'll be back here 4 p.m. BST tomorrow. We're doing our first Q&A with a seller, where we bring them in and I'll put an expert panel together to answer all of those sellers' questions about their business. Then, as Lazar mentioned about Japan, on Wednesday, we're going to be doing a show on selling in Japan with the Japan guy, a good friend of mine, Nick. He's been on the show previously, about 2 years ago. Ellis, you met Nick as well, didn't you, in Germany, when we met in 2016, 17. So that's for Wednesday's show. And see you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Have a good one.